Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming and welcome to today's Semiahmoo Resort Association Town Hall. My name is April Hashimoto. I'm the Vice President of on the SRA board. And Debbie, our president, is unable to make it here today, so she sends her regret. But I will introduce the members of the board who are here in attendance. We have Tom McDaniel and Kieran Brennan. And on this side, we have Delia Alberstein, Rod Nib, and Luke come up. So we have missing today, also sending their regrets, Terry Clevenger and David Moon, who are board members, and Mark Andrew, who represents the resort and may be able to pop in sometime today. I assume he's on the resort property somewhere. We also have staff in attendance, so we have Aaron Hassan at the very end there. Everybody should know Aaron, our general manager. And we have Lori at the back operating all the audio visual, and Alyssa Klassen way back in the corner, who is our administrative assistant at the office. In addition, we have two guests here with the Watkin Conservation District. We have Robert Walters at the back over on this side, and his assistant Alexis Bryson. So the main topic of today's town hall is wildfire resilience, but we will do a quick update on the main things the board's been working on for the last quarter or so, since the stairs at Boundary Ridge. There was a vote to fund the replacement of those stairs, which passed, and the project is underway. If anybody wants to drive by and see, you'll be able to see that there's new stairs and good progress being made there. The stairs at Boundary Ridge are an amenity that's available to everybody in Semiahmoo. So once they're reopened, everybody's welcome to go over there and use them to get down to the beach and back up again. We have had to fill a board vacancy. We were sad to have Mohammed leave the board, and but equally happy to welcome Luke as our new board member. The election committee worked on that and is also working on preparing for the upcoming annual general meeting. So the annual general meeting generally takes place towards the end of October, but the planning starts in June. And so that is underway. Thank you to the election committee for all the work that they've been doing on that. It's a fairly big project. We also have some financial activities underway. Their reserve study has been completed. There's sort of a larger, more comprehensive reserve study that's done every 3 years. This is that third year. So the larger update was done this year. And in between, there are more, it's a more abbreviated update that's done. So this was the year of the big update, and as well, Aaron is working on the 2026 budget that will be in the ballot at the annual general meeting. And once he has that completed, he'll present it to the finance committee, who will review it. The other topics that the board has been working on recently is taking a look at the recreational easement on the Drayton Harbor hillside. And so those are just preliminary discussions that have started on sort of the history of what's happened there and what our options would be going forward. And then a topic that I know everybody is very interested in, is the main topic today, is wildfire mitigation. And so there has been work done to get grants and from the state. And so far the money that has been received has been used to remove some trees, along the Semiahmoo Parkway, thinning out, what would be fuel for wildfire. And then also we have some of the neighborhood associations who are working on wildfire mitigations for their own neighborhoods. So that brings me to, I'll hand over to Debbie, who will introduce more formally our guest speaker. Following that presentation, we'll have a question and answer period. And then I can get back up and we'll take questions from the audience. So over to Delia.
So I would like to introduce Robert Walters, who has, and Alexis Bryson, who have spent a great deal of time and energy with us, working with the wildfire mitigation working group that was formed, and helping us to navigate what is seemingly overwhelming. There's a lot of information to know about wildfire mitigation. And Robert has he has a degree from Oregon State University in in a natural resource policy and management. Alexis has a degree from Western Washington University, and I don't have my classes on Bachelor's of Science and Environmental Science and public policy. So these are both very knowledgeable people. They helped us navigate through a grant process that we were able to qualify for as the SRA, but also 5 neighborhood associations were able to qualify as well. And they've come out and they've inspected our SRA on buffer areas, giving us specific advice as to what to do. They've gone to each of the neighborhood association properties where they have forested lands and worked with the leadership boards of those associations, showing them exactly what they need to do with a crew, a landscape crew present, so that their crew is speaking directly to them. So they have really invested a lot of time and helped educate us. And we have seen parts of the presentation that will be given today. It's very informative in terms of what we can do as individual homeowners to help mitigate the risk of our homes catching on fire in the event of a wildfire event. But also he's going to be talking about evacuation planning. And so with that, I will give you Robert Walters.
Okay. Thank you, Delia. Thank you, everyone, for having us here today. And to start our presentation today, I'm actually going to bring up my colleague, not my assistant, no offense. Alexis and I have formed quite a symbiotic relationship over the last year and a half, and we complement each other really well. And hopefully our presentation today kind of reflects that. But I'm going to bring Alexis up now, and she's going to start our presentation with talking about the Whatcom Conservation District and some of our other programs and some of our history. So Alexis.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alexis Bryson. I'm the Community Wildfire Resilience Technician at Whatcom Conservation District. So I'm just going to talk to you a bit about what Whatcom Conservation District does for the community as a whole. You guys are pretty familiar with our wildfire program, but we actually do so much more. So since 1946, we were kind of established following the Dust Bowl. All conservation districts were to help protect soil and water resources for citizens across the US. So since 1946, we've worked with landowners and farmers to foster a healthy, sustainable relationship between people and the environment. So our goal is to really connect people, landowners across Whatcom County with their natural resources and help them better protect the resources that they value in their communities. So our goal is to promote healthy land, healthy water, and healthy people. So we do this across a number of different programs. One, we have a habitat and restoration program, and these people, they work to assist with the protection and restoration of natural habitats, specifically for salmon. So they work in riparian restoration areas, building these riparian buffers and agricultural areas to protect those streams and also help farmers achieve their agricultural goals as well. So we also have a conservation planning team, and this is really our farm planning. So they provide free and confidential farm planning to help meet the needs of farm goals while still protecting those natural resources like salmon bearing streams. We also have a really robust education outreach program. So we're part of that. We're here educating you guys about wildfire, but our education outreach team, they also do a lot of great work working with school districts to educate youth about their natural resources. And we have a nice watershed model to teach children about our watershed and where our water goes and what affects it. We also teach adults, so we have tours, workshops, and events. Part of that is tied into our farm planning team, where we have a farm speaker series to help becoming new farmers learn about how to better manage their farms. I think this track is about like manure management and running a small farm business stand, things like that. And our program, so we're part of the Climate Resiliency and Preparedness Program. That includes wildfire resiliency, but we also have a new forest stewardship program to help small forest landowners meet their farm planning or their forest planning needs on their property. So this is to increase the implementation of wildfire risk reduction practices and also protect your natural resources for climate change. So Rob's gonna come back and talk to you guys about our wildfire resiliency program and a bit about emergency evacuation as well.
Thank you, Alexis. Now you're stuck listening to me. Okay, so our wildfire resiliency program, I'm gonna try to stand behind this thing, but I'm kind of a walker and talker at the same time. So if I start wandering, you'll have to just forgive me. We have built our wildfire resiliency program on 4 tenets. The first one is through empowering landowners by providing tools and resources, access to experts, and workshops. So your access to experts is today, Alexis and I giving you this information. We also have workshops throughout the year the public's invited to, where we do demonstrations of biochar kiln production and chipping days, things like that. We support our communities through wildfire planning, the Firewise USA program, which some of you in this room should be pretty familiar with now. We're gonna increase that familiarity a little bit later in this presentation. And then fuels reduction projects. We also evaluate wildfire risk. Some of you in this room may have had us out to your individual residences to do what we call our home ignition zone risk assessment. That results in a report that identifies your ignition vulnerabilities and then offers some mitigation actions that you can take to reduce those vulnerabilities. We also do neighborhood level assessments, like Delia was mentioning. I came out and worked with some of the associations in their commonly held properties and gave some suggestions on reducing ladder fuels and things like that. And then finally, we engage our partners. I know what I know, but I also know what I don't know. But the good thing is I know somebody who knows that. So we engage with the DNR, local fire departments, state and federal level people who just have a little more experience or knowledge or resources. I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel and also learning from other people's flat tires. So we engage our partners quite frequently. So as we all are aware, wildfire in Western Washington is becoming more and more frequent. Every year we have a fire. And here's just an example of over the last 8 years or so. But actually a lot of those are just from the last 2 years. Chuckanut Mountain is probably more memorable because it kind of shut down the road there. But Lake Whatcom was very visual with the smoke and the flames coming over the south end of the lake. And then some people don't even know about this fire that happened last April on Bender Road. That was almost directly east of here. Went across the Canadian border. It started on a very calm day out, within the burn allowances, and the wind changed that afternoon and it became a 50-acre fire that was threatening 3 homes pretty quickly. And then last summer, of course, we had the Easy Pass fire where it made going to Winthrop very hard and a long ways to all the way down through Wenatchee and then back up to Winthrop. But that fire actually taught us a lesson in other ways too, because not only is during the fire a bad thing, but post-fire is a big thing, right? We have landslides, we have land disturbances. During that Easy Pass fire, they were getting ready to open the road back up and it washed out because of the effects of the fire that happened uphill from it. So we have all these things happening around us on this side of the state, and there's many factors that contribute to this increased risk on our side of the mountains. A lot of this is climate related. We have increasing air temperatures. It's hotter and warmer here. It gets hotter sooner, it stays hotter longer. We have less rainfall during our summer months. Last week, Whatcom County was declared in a drought condition for the 3rd consecutive year. We have less snow melt. Now that was not true previous year, but this past year it was true. We have less snow melt, and The bigger conundrum with the snow melt is that because of those increased temperatures, the snow is melting earlier in the season. We don't have that sustained supply of water coming down off the mountain to keep our ground wet, to keep our vegetation green, and to keep it somewhat fire resistant. And here's a fact that kind of stunned me when I heard it at a workshop here about a month ago. In 2024, there were more wildfire ignitions on the west side of the Cascades than on the east side, for the first time in recorded history. Now, we didn't burn more acres, we didn't lose more infrastructure than Eastern Washington, we just had more ignitions. Which brings me to a very key point. You can look throughout wildfire history, there is never a bad wildfire, a severe wildfire, a catastrophic wildfire without a high wind event. So we have many fires in Western Washington that get started every year, and they go out because luckily we do live on the wet side of the mountains. But those wet conditions are drying up. And when we do have fires over here, because we have so much more fuel on the ground, so much more connectivity between the ground up into our canopies, our fires are way more catastrophic over here. So they're less frequent, but they are way higher severity when they do occur. We're gonna go over a little terminology and a little fire science so that we're all kind of talking from the same area here. This is gonna keep it very high level. I love geeking out on fire science and terms like pyrolysis and all this stuff, but we'll try to keep it very understandable. So there's a term we use in the wildfire world called WUI, the WUI, and it's interchangeable between two things. The wildland urban interface, which is generally within a city or urban area, and it's where we built a neighborhood, we've carved out a section of forest and built right in up against the trees. Then we have the wildland urban intermix. You might recognize some of those street names on the screen. It's generally not in an urban area, but it's where structures are scattered throughout the wildland. There's no clear demarcation between the wildland starts and where the neighborhood ends, that kind of thing. And so we're in the WUI here. And I'm gonna say parts of Semiahmoo are probably that interface, but most of it's that intermix. We've chosen to live amongst the trees because they're beautiful and we enjoy the aesthetics of it. But it's a value decision that we subconsciously made without realizing we'd also put ourselves at risk from wildfire. Now, some of you may have bought these places out here 20, 30 years ago. And at that time, we were the asbestos forest and there was no worries. But again, we've got these changing conditions that now make us, we must take actions to change what we're doing on our properties. So a little bit of fire science. There's the fire triangle. There's three things that affect fire. The fuel, and to me, anything that can burn is fuel. That's your grass, your vegetation, your car, your lawnmower, your house. And if I've been out to your house and given you the risk assessment, or Alexis has, you've gotten this speech from me that everything's a fuse that could possibly connect a fire somewhere in your yard to your house. Weather, again, no catastrophic fires without a high wind event. Wind is a real driving factor, and then also relative humidity. Relative humidity gets below like 22%, and wildland firefighters say things will just spontaneously combust. There just becomes a certain point where vegetation is just asking to be ignited. And then topography. Fire burning up a hill burns 2 to 3 times faster than it does across a flat plain because that heat is preheating all the materials above it and just makes it easier to combust. So we've got areas here in Semiahmoo that are on slopes, the tops of slopes, and those become a great concern, especially with the vegetation or fuel load down below that. So understanding wildfire spread, Hollywood has us confused. This big wall of fire doesn't just come ripping through the forest and it's burning up trees in seconds and moving forward. The fire will stay there and consume what fuel it has. It will stay in one place and burn that group of trees. It reaches the top, wind casts those embers, and we get spot fires that burn ahead. The spot fires burn on the ground. They find some ladder fuel to climb up into the trees and get in the canopy. That whole process starts over again. That's why when you see these wildfires that are going on right now down in the Dalles, on the Oregon-Washington border, every day they're launching teams to go put out spot fires. This thing is it's contained in an area burning the fuel, but the wind is spotting fires away from it, and that's how these fires spread. So, what is the biggest threat from wildfire? Is it a huge threatening wall of flame? No. It's these small little embers that come flying through the air. And they're the things that land on something on or near our house that then causes it to ignite and burn down. I'm now gonna play a 13-minute video for you from Jack Cohen, who is the godfather of wildfire science. He wrote most of the books that we live and breathe on, and he does a lot better job than I do.
Millions to thousands of houses destroyed during wildfire. Does that mean that the wildland urban interface disasters are inevitable as well? No. We have great opportunities as homeowners to prevent our houses from igniting during wildfires. Perceptions are that these big wildfires are something we can't do anything about. They're overwhelming. If huge organizations can't control the wildfire, how is it that somehow I can do something to my house to keep it from burning down? It's not a matter of controlling the wildfire. It's a matter of changing those conditions of the house and its immediate surroundings. There's a lot that we can do to the little things to our house and its immediate surroundings in order to reduce the ignition potential of that house. I'm going to do an assessment on this house for its ignition vulnerabilities. The assessment is what all of us homeowners can do. Currently, we're not in fire season, but it's getting hot and it's getting dry. So this is a perfect time before the smoke's in the air to do this assessment. The great opportunity we have as homeowners is that we can do the little things around our house to keep our home from igniting. We can actually separate our house from the extreme wildfire. We don't have to rely on the control of the extreme wildfire in order to keep our house from burning down. Over the last 30 years, my colleagues and I have done research involving laboratory experiments, field experiments, and post-fire disaster assessments to quantify and qualify the relationship between a wildfire and a destroyed home. What we found is that the high-intensity flames, more than 100 feet away from the house, are largely incapable of igniting the house directly. It's the little things that seem to be destroying the houses. The burning embers, we call them firebrands, lofted out of the high-intensity wildfire to land in the community, sometimes directly on houses as well as the surroundings. It's not 100-foot flames. It's a pile of firebrands that would fit in the palm of our hand. So my colleagues and I designed a firebrand and ember shower demonstration. We have a full-size house. It's got bark mulch and pine needles around the base. It's got pine needles in the rain gutters. It's got pine needles on the roof. We have an ember generator that then casts a brand blizzard at this house. In order for those firebrands to be effective in igniting the house, they either have to ignite the house directly, or they have to ignite something around the house that then can spread to the house. The main factors determining this home's ignition potential are right here. The home's characteristics related to its immediate surroundings. For our assessment, our perspective changes to this house being one of fuel for the potential ignition. Look around your house and see where the litter, the leaves, and the needles have piled up, and visualize that that's going to be where firebrands begin to pile up and collect. So here we have pine needle litter right up next to the house. It's on the steps. It could ignite and start this wall and step area on fire. It also can ignite on this lathing, which is right up underneath the wood shingle siding, and ignite that. This This doesn't burn with high intensities, it burns with low intensities, but it's extremely important. In fact, on this house, it easily could be the critical factor that leads to its total destruction.
No.
If this house had rain gutters, this litter would be in the rain gutters, potentially igniting and putting flame right up at the eave line, potentially igniting the roof and going into the attic. On this side of the house, what our attention should be on is this gable vent. It's the most exposed kind of vent. I noticed that it's got fine mesh screen, which certainly helps keep large firebrands from going into the attic and potentially igniting this house. One of the things we looked at were vents during the brand blizzard. The brands are directly impacting that vent opening. The burning brands can blow right into the attic and potentially ignite the material that's in the attic. The remedy is simple. All we have to do is use finer mesh screen to cover the openings. One of the important aspects that we demonstrated was that you don't have to have a metal roof in order to keep the house from igniting from firebrands. What we showed was that any roof that doesn't ignite and spread fire can survive the brand blizzard. So as we previously demonstrated, composition shingle roofs with pine needles on don't represent a significant ignition problem. But look here, we've got a wood-sided wall coming down to the top of the roof where this needle deposition, when it ignites, it's going to put flame contact right on the side of the wood wall. This results in flame contact and high ignition potential, resulting in the destruction of this house. The house includes more than just itself if there are outbuildings that are close enough to ignite and spread to the house. So maybe we have a shed or we've got a chicken coop, which then can burn long enough to ignite the shed that's next to that, which then ignites and burns sufficiently in order to ignite the house. So we need to be as concerned about the surroundings of our outbuildings and their condition as we do our house.
I looked into landscaping, I looked into fireproof home building, I looked into fireproof lawn furniture. I mean, I was going for everything that I could for the safest fire safety you could. And we had a checklist, no firewood stack next to the house. All of our lawn furniture was fire rated. I wanted to feel like if there was a fire, we had the absolute best chance possible of us and our house surviving.
So some of the little things that began to get the house during an extreme wildfire from the firebrands are, for example, something as simple as a broom being left out. Flammable deck furniture, where we've got flammable cushions on the furniture on the deck next to the house. The cushions ignite from the firebrands, they ignite the deck railing, which is connected to the house.
We put 3 foot of rock siding all the way around up the house, as well as in our landscaping 3 feet out of crushed rock. We talked to people, all it took was one thing, a firewood stacked in the wrong place, or lawn furniture caught fire on their porch. One tiny little technique that wasn't followed.
Well, knowledge is key. The more you know, the more you can increase your chances, and not always does that have to cost money, right? It's just knowledge. It's still a shock to go through a fire, but to come back and see your home, right? That's such a good feeling.
Flame contact on the house is a really bad idea. What we want to make sure of is that we don't get flame contact on the house. We don't have a fire burning across pine needle litter, for example, and making direct contact with the house. But that only takes 5 feet around the house in order to keep the flames away. Take a look at the surrounding area of the house. Adjacent to this wood wall, we've got these green shrubs. So the question is, are these green shrubs a big problem and do they have to be removed? Well, as long as we've got green foliage without dead material, we're pretty good. But if we take a look, we've got dead material in the canopy and we've got dead material deposited under the wood wall. What we want to do to keep the shrubs is to prune out all the dead material within the canopy as well as underneath in order to keep the wall and the shrubs from igniting. So we don't need to put out all the fires. We don't need to make sure that no fire occurs within the neighborhood. We do need to make sure that there is a high intensity fire within 100 feet. And we want to make sure that surface fire doesn't come directly to the house and ignite it. We definitely can't have flammable wood roof on our house. It's the most susceptible to fire brand ignitions. But there are many things that occur on a seasonal basis. Cleaning up the litter around the base of the house, out of the rain gutters, making sure that we've swept the deck of pine needle litter and leaves, and making sure that our firewood piles are on the deck, and making sure that we've cut the grass and not having things right up next to the house that can burn. We've just taken a look at this home, but it's obvious that every home and every property are going to be different. That's why it's very important for us to seek information so that we can find the vulnerabilities to ignition of our own homes. Remember, if your home doesn't ignite, it doesn't burn. You've got to act now to address these little things long before the fire ever starts.
So there's a good example of not reinventing the wheel. He does such a good job with that, and I share that video liberally. So the one thing he said in there that really applies strongly out here at Semiahmoo, because I've driven around all your neighborhoods, way too many houses with cedar shake shingle roofs still. That is the biggest vulnerability around here, and if there's an ever storm, that house is burning down. I mean, I'm not one to hold punches. So if you are one of these folks that still has a cedar shake shingle roof, you must replace that. You must replace it soon. At the very least, spend the money to have it treated. They do have a chemical out there to make it fire retardant, but that is an extreme, extreme vulnerability on any home. And okay, off the soapbox. So now, just based on what we just saw and learned from Dr. Jack Cohen, can this home here, this is a real life photo, can this home survive this fire? Well, we know that the best protection for homeowners is to improve that defensible space via improvements in the home ignition zone. And we're gonna go a little more depth into that now than Jack did. So we want to consider the following recommendations when we're looking at that first immediate zone. Now that's the house itself in the first 5 feet. And one thing this slide doesn't cover is the materials on the house. Again, those roofs, our siding, especially where that first 3 feet of the house, where we have that roof to wall transition area. But other things, we want to clear the debris. We don't want dry dead material around the bases of our houses. Don't use bark mulch, wood chips, or other flammable materials in that first 3 to 5 foot area up against the house. 1/8 inch screen vents. There's actually a company that is headquartered both in Spokane and Brisbane, Australia. And they just came out with wildfire defense screening, and it goes down to 1/16 inch stainless steel for people who are super, super concerned about it. And then clean gutters and roofs. Now, the textbook that we study from for wildfire mitigation says clean your gutters once a year. Well, that guy did not live in the Pacific Northwest. So what I recommend is do it in May, June, early June, so that that stuff's out of there for the wildfire season. And then do it again in October so that your downspouts are clear for the rainy season. And we go out to the intermediate zone, which is 5 feet out to 30 feet. We call that the lean, clean, and green zone. What we want in here is a well-kept lawn. Keep the grasses down below 4 inches. We want large vegetation and trees to be at least 10 feet from the house. Again, that would be a flame source that would be too close to the house. Spacing between the trees. He kind of alluded to it in the video. When I look at things in the yard, like I said, to me, everything's a fuse. So we don't want a connection of, a hedgerow or trees right next to each other that lead up to the house, where fire can start out in the corner of the yard and easily lead its way to the structure. And then hardscaping or non-combustible landscaping, employ rockeries, employ stone, things like that in your landscaping. It helps break up things. If you think on a fireways, it's a fire break, right? It's a place where fire would stop on its way to the house. And now we go out to the extended zone, which is 30 feet to 100 feet. And again, we're trying to keep those large significant flames that far away from the house. Ladder fuels, and it is exactly what it says. It's fuel that acts like a ladder for fire to climb up and get into the tops of the trees. That's when the ember storms start, and that's where we start having the problems. Beware of the embers becoming crown fires. Again, they're not gonna, very rarely, I'm not gonna say this never happens, but very rarely does an ember land in the top of the tree and then the crown fire starts, right? It's gonna land on something below the tree, or it's gonna travel to the tree and then follow its way up to become a crown fire. And this may include your neighbor's property. And here in Semiahmoo, for most of your lots, 100 feet out, you're gonna be in your neighbor's property. And that's why we say wildfire mitigation is a community effort. You do what you can on your own property. You shake hands over the fence and try to work together so that you can become an ignition resistant community. So as you can see here, the 100-foot line is overlapping different neighbors, and different, some of them are sharing access driveways and roads and things like that. So it really is, good fences make good neighbors, but not the ones that burn and catch your house on fire. So, and as you can see here, not only can that house survive a wildfire, but it did survive a wildfire. Based on time, I won't sit here with my pointer and show you all the reasons why, but there's a lot of good things going on in that house, and that is a cedar sided house. That's not flame resistant siding. They did a lot of good things with fire breaks, such as their driveway, gravel around the house, stonework up for the first couple of feet, concrete patios instead of vegetation and landscaping in that area. And this is actually a local photo. Your home doesn't have to look like it belongs on the moon for it to be fire resistant. We don't have to just remove everything, get rid of all the green, pretty things. That's why we live in the Pacific Northwest, because things are green and pretty. So there's actions that you can take to still have that beautiful Pacific Northwest look in your yard, but be fire resistant. So what are the next steps that we can do together to help you? Well, a lot of you have already done this stuff. We come out and we do the free, no obligation, confidential wildfire risk assessments, where we go around your house, we identify these ignition vulnerabilities. You get a report that can be several pages long, but there's lots of pictures usually, and then give you those mitigation actions to go around your property. We do the neighborhood level risk assessments that we mentioned before. And one of the reasons we're here today is guidance with the Firewise USA. And another program that was just started by Washington DNR is the Community Wildfire Ambassadors Program. And for those of you that are in the Firewise program and involved on the boards for that, we'll get more into that. What that is kind of like a support network for resident leaders. So that, again, not reinventing the wheel and learning from other people's flat tires. So that's why we're here today. You said something just a minute ago that made me think I might have missed a community on this slide, and I apologize if I did. But we have, it may be 6, but I thought 5 Firewise communities. 5 total, okay. So does that include the SRA? Okay, so I missed one, and I apologize if somebody's in here. Maybe somebody correct me which one I missed. Oh, Glen Eagle 3. Okay, that's where I messed up. They had the same name, so not really my fault, but all right. Okay. So anyway, these communities have taken the initiative to register on the Firewise USA portal, which I have a slide here later that says it's easy, and some of you will disagree with that. And that's fine. I do too. But they have taken actions already in their communities in their small HOAs within Semiahmoo here to become more wildfire resilient and take some of these actions that we're talking about. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about the Firewise program itself. It's a voluntary recognition program. It's been around since 2002. The NFPA is the National Fire Protection Association. They worked with the Forest Service. Now we have some private insurance companies, Allstate and State Farm Insurance are getting involved in supporting the Firewise USA program and spreading it around. And it addresses risk on private properties. It's not looking at US forest property or national parks or anything. It's just for private property. Why is Firewise USA a good idea? Well, it's an established framework. Again, somebody's already driven that tire down the road, and it seems to work. Now, it's not a prescription program. It's not going to say you do this, this, and this, and then you're good. It just identifies, and it's nationwide, and it's actually in Australia now. So it takes some very general conditions and teaches mitigation actions around that. But it's also a community building organization and program. So Semiahmoo communities, here's how we become a Firewise community. And some of you, we've been through this and you've been waiting for me to get back to you to walk you through this a little bit more. And trust me, later this summer and this fall, we're going to get really into this. As we're into wildfire season right now, our time's a little pressing, but we are going to get you all through this. And by the time you're going to go, okay, maybe the website wasn't that hard. So the first thing you have to do is get organized. You have to form a board or a committee for your Firewise community. And that usually consists of, if you have an HOA, a board member from your HOA. But we also like to see just a citizen from the community that isn't involved in other ways, but they have a passion or an interest in wildfire mitigation. And then we also ask that you have a wildfire professional on your board, just as a consultant. It can be your local fire chief, it can be a DNR representative, it can be myself or Alexis. Make a plan. So in between that getting organized and making a plan, I'm going to come out and do a community risk assessment. I'm going to identify some very general vulnerabilities in the neighborhood as a whole. And then we're going to sit down as a board and we're going to identify some actions that we want to take. And it's a 3-year plan that we do that on. We redo it every 3 years. And then we go out and we work that plan. We do the work, we mitigate the issues that we've seen. And a lot of times it's going to be fuels reduction, things like that. But other times we're going to need to encourage our neighbors to get rid of all the ferns up against their cedar siding and replace it with some gravel and maybe a more fire resistant native plant. And then, for anybody that was raised Southern Baptist like me, we got to go tell it on the mountain. We go tell about it. And that's where we do it on the web portal, on the website. We go in there, we report how many hours we put in, how much money we used in our mitigation practices. And it's a pretty simple 4-step process. The hardest part of this thing really is making that plan. That's the most time requiring thing, to sit down as a group and make that plan. So let's talk about those activities that you could do for mitigation, or that activities that count towards your hours in Firewise. Having us come out and do a walkthrough of your property risk evaluation. Every time we come out and do a risk assessment, that's 3 hours basically towards your commitment towards Firewise. You've taken an action to mitigate your fire risk. Make that 3-year action plan. That is something that's required that you have to do, and you have to initiate that plan. Again, do the work, clean up the debris around your home and community. Don't hit me. I'll get rid of that easy word for the next round. And then here's the requirements. These are the very, very stringent, hard requirements that Firewise has. 1 hour of labor per dwelling in the community. So if Boundary Village has 44 houses, that's 44 hours. Doesn't matter how many people live in each of those houses. Also doesn't matter if some of them are only occupied part of the year. But that's 44 hours that community has to put into mitigation actions in the community. And that includes on their private properties. Or the financial equivalent. And I believe right now, one volunteer hour is $28.75 on a federal scale. So if you are serious about wildfire mitigation on your own property or in your community, that's never been a consideration. You're going to go way past 1 hour. You're going to go way past $29 spending that money on your community and on your property. That's not a hard one to hit. The community education, they require that you have somebody like myself, Alexis, come out and give you a little bit of education about wildfire risk. And for you communities that are registering for the Firewise program, this is our education event for the year. Going forward in future years, what we recommend is you have somebody like ourselves or DNR come in once every 3 years and give you like a refresher course. In the intermittent years, you just include some literature in your quarterly or annual mailings to your membership. posting some flyers somewhere, just making people aware, hey, it's April, let's start thinking about doing shipping days, just providing information, education within the community. That's it. That's all you have to do to become a Firewise community. Other than the reporting, but I mean, as far as individual people contributing, it's not a whole lot. The one thing about Firewise that I will say is it's not like, hey, we got there, we're done. It's kind of like a 12-step program. The sign out there means that we admit we have a problem, but we're taking steps to correct it and to confront it. That vegetation that we cut down this year is going to be there again next year. So we don't do it one time, we do it continuously. And with that, I'm going to transition into the evacuation planning. And I'm going to start with the disclaimer that evacuation planning is very much more the purview of the Division of Emergency Management within the Sheriff's Department of Whatcom County. I'm going to share some very basic information here for you. As a community, I'm going to recommend that you self-organize, that you contact the Division of Emergency Management and have their professionals who are well more versed in this than we are meet with you as a community and develop a plan for evacuation if one doesn't already exist. If one exists, then it needs to be reviewed and possibly updated. But it kind of falls outside of our purview to offer you an exact evacuation plan. What I always tell people over here is worst case scenario, there's water and greens and fairways. But so we call it the 3 Ps when we're preparing for emergency evacuation. The first one is planning. So when will you know to evacuate? You need to be signed up for some kind of alert, unless you're like my dad and constantly on your news feed and trying to figure out what in the world's going on next. You need to be signed up for some kind of alert notification system. And we'll go over some of those that are available in Whatcom County here in just a little bit. Plan your primary and alternate routes out of the neighborhood and community. We never know where the disaster is going to be happening, and it might not always be wildfire, right? But we want to have at least 2 ways out of where we live. And I understand with some of these gated communities, there's only one way to the gate, but sometimes there's multiple ways to even get around within that neighborhood to get to the gate. And then once you're to the gate, there might be multiple ways to evacuate. Remember that evacuation doesn't always mean that we have to leave the community entirely. It might be another place within the community that we go to be safe. As part of evacuation, you're going to have a designated contact, a family member, or a friend that lives outside your community. Make sure that you've established how you're going to contact them. Sometimes cell phone service might be down, so social media maybe is a way to do that, or make them aware of the county resources that are available for connecting people during evacuation. Know what the protocol is for where you work. If you have people in school or if you're on a commuter route, out here being, living the resort life, maybe not so much on that commuter thing, but just be aware of everyone within your household and where they might possibly be during evacuation. Because when we plan for evacuation, we all make the failing assumption that we're all going to be at home together and we get to leave together. And more often than not, she's at the doctor, he's, having coffee with the guys, but we both need to get home and grab medication, the pet, stuff like that. So plan for the different scenarios when you're thinking about evacuation. And then finally, part of the planning is leave early, especially if you have small children, pets, or physical challenges. We evacuate on the ready, set, go, 1, 2, 3. So if you have some of these other conditions, maybe don't wait till they say go. When they say set, maybe it's time to get moving. The second P is prepare. So teach residents, inform yourselves about the importance of backing your vehicles into the garage or the driveway and facing the direction of escape. So this doesn't have to happen in November if we're worried about wildfire, right? But start about this time of year through September, we might think about having our car backed in, because if everybody in the street's trying to back their cars out, that can cause issues. One accident on a small street can block in multiple people from an evacuation route. Pre-pack your kits with the essentials like medicine, family records, important phone numbers. Carry a little bit of cash with you. In severe emergencies, electrical system might be down, and ATMs and those card services at purchasing places might not be working. And they say to take enough food, clothing, and water for everybody in the family for up to 72 hours. There's some other resources that'll tell you how to plan for 2 weeks. There's A resource actually on the WhatComeReady.org that will tell you it's 12 months to 2 weeks. So every month you take a step, and at the end of that 1 year, you've got a go bag or a survival kit, basically, that would help your household survive for 2 weeks. And then finally, practice. Don't just think about it and talk about it. Sit at the table with a map or on a computer screen, do a tabletop exercise, we call it, and then get in your car and go and do it. So, and evacuate together. If you have 3 cars in the garage, you all get 1 car and leave. We're not trying to evacuate all the cars because, again, more vehicles causes congestion, and that could be the thing that causes other people not to be able to evacuate. I would recommend, if you follow the path of consulting with emergency management and developing a plan, that you conduct a community drill. And sometimes that can be just a tabletop drill where you bring people into a room like this with tables and maps and little playing pieces, and you kind of play out that scenario of how we evacuate. And then help residents practice evacuating animals and pets. A lot of us put a lot of value in our little furry buddies, and we're not going to leave anywhere without them. And when we get in these emergency situations, the shock and the panic sets in, our emotions come in, and we really, really, really want to save Fido. So have a plan ahead of time for that. And I'm not sure if Semiahmoo has a CERT team, but if you don't, you should. And if you do, okay. Expansion of the CERT team, having backup people, new people, fresh blood coming in is a great thing. So CERT teams, if you're not familiar, they're certified emergency response teams. They educate community members about what to do in case of emergency scenarios and things like that. But they drill a lot too. So these are the people that you're going to look to, because our local resources, fire, sheriff, they're going to be overwhelmed, right? And they want to help every individual, but they don't have the capacity. So having these CERT teams in place and knowing who your CERT team members are, knowing how to contact them in these emergencies, these lines of communication are very, very important. So just some real fine points about evacuation. The fire officials are the ones who are going to decide when it's time to evacuate. It's not the sheriff's department. It's not actually the Division of Emergency Management. They respond once the fire official has made that determination that it's time to evacuate. In some of the emergency notifications that we have, the website WhatComeReady.org will then link you to many other resources for evacuation planning and notifications. The new one in Whatcom County is called Connexus. It's intermediately being called Connexus AlertSense because it was formerly AlertSense, and they don't want people to get too confused. But it's the same thing. You sign up for it, it'll give you text notifications. It'll automatically dial you in case of emergencies, and it lets you know on that stages of 1, 2, and 3. And then there's an integrated public alert system that during a severe emergency, it automatically calls everybody within a zip code. So if there's an emergency in Semiahmoo, but you're on vacation in Texas, you're not going to get alerted on the iPod system. You would have to sign up for one of the other systems to be alerted for things in your certain area. And then one small thing I always like to mention, sheriff's deputies and public works people in yellow vests be the ones directing traffic, not firefighters. Firefighters are there to fight the fire and to make mitigation actions to stop other things from catching on fire. And too often during emergency situations, they're being hounded by residents to tell them where to go. Those firefighters are way too busy doing other things. So again, something to remember, the sheriff's guys and the guys in yellow vests are the people that are going to be directing you. Firefighters are they're going one way, and the other folks are trying to get you to go the other way. And again, Whatcom County uses the Ready, Set, Go. This is pretty much standard down the west coast of the United States now. So level 1, ready. Let's get all that stuff by the door. Let's get it in the car, make sure our car's facing the right way. Level 2, set. Now we're taking that next step. We've got our, if we have people with physical limitations in our house, pets, we've got all that stuff ready to go. And then on go is not where we put stuff in the car. We're grabbing it by the door. That was done at set. In go, we're turning that ignition and we're out in the community. And that is all I have for you today, except for the question and answer period. There is a QR code here that will take you to our website. And I wanted to mention, we also have some resources here on the bar over here that will, some literature that'll go over that home ignition zone, some other things that our program covers. But maybe possibly the most important thing is we have a sign-up sheet for people to sign up for that home ignition zone risk assessment. Sign up, we'll get you on the schedule, we'll come out and conduct that assessment, get you that report, and you can start taking those actions. So thank you for having us here today, and I'm looking forward to any questions.
list of those work, that is registration or material?
It'll be on our website, at, watconcd.org/wildfire. But there is some information over here that'll have that QR code that you can get and go directly to that website. And we've got a lot of resources on the bottom, that you can click to, and it'll take you to the different websites that we've shown. In the back there, yeah.
So a couple of things. I noticed on my property, there are several large old stumps that have been, charred. Do you know anything about past fires here 40, 50, 100 years ago? Second thing, my insurance company, Safeco, sent me a letter earlier this year saying they're contracting with a service to come out in the case that a fire is likely to come and cut down trees and make the houses, make my house safe from fire. Can you comment on that?
Okay, so the first question was, he has some stumps on his property that show, or burn scars from previous fires, so about the fire history here. For out here on the coast, honestly, there's very little written down in the fire history. And again, it's because that fire probably happened without a windy minute. It probably didn't go very far. It put itself out in the wet ground and stuff like that. Here, I'm gonna be a fire science geek. In the last 3 years, they've been doing lots of studies out on the Olympic Peninsula. They used to think we have fire every 250 to 300 years. It's turning out we've had fire every 20 to 40 years over there, but they just weren't expansive fires, right? So that's probably what happened there, is a small fire that put itself out, and that one tree was lost. So it came down. The second question was about insurance. His insurance company said they will send people out to get rid of, not hazard trees because they might fall in the house, but because they might provide an ignition source for the house. What I can say about insurance is it's an ongoing struggle. Insurance companies use different predictive modeling than the people that fight the fires. So you've probably heard the horror stories of people in California and Oregon where the insurance company looked at a map and said, nope, no more fire insurance for you. In Washington State, our newly elected insurance commissioner is working with insurance companies to make sure that doesn't happen on a wide basis here. It has happened spottily across Washington State. But that really, you're gonna have to talk to your insurance company. I know that there's, because we're in Whatcom County, there's some other regulations around tree removal and things like that. So there's a balancing act and some hurdles to go over with that.
On insurance in California, I don't own the book in the Altadena and the Canyon and places like that, and they burn down. My house, I say it's my house, I sold it in 1994, did not burn down. And the resident in that area was right up against the end of what's next to a horse. And all I did to that house was follow the Los Angeles County fire regulations or wildfire zone. That included, I put new multi-pane windows in, made sure my doors were tight, and put fire retardant vents in, and it had a Class A roof on it already, and a new garage door, because what they told me is you keep that amber cloud, which causes 60 to 90% of your home fires, out of the house, your house is gonna survive. By the way, in this last fire, those houses were built on cut and fill lots. They're black, they're on a hill right next to the forest. Boom, 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 boom. My house, the one I have, is right in the center. I can show you pictures of it, it survived. You can also go to recovery.lacounty.gov, but the two above it, the one above it and the one below it, who didn't laugh at me because I was doing these improvements to the house, they both burned to the ground.
Yeah,
So hardening your own home is probably, to me, the key.
you're absolutely right. That's 100% the biggest return on investment is what we do on the home in that first 5 feet. And I'll tell you, as a wildfire professional, whenever we see the news talk about the miracle house, there's no miracle houses. That was planned and on purpose. All right. They made choices to put things on and near their home that would not cause the ignition of their home. I went to Maui after the fires. Underneath the different auspices, I was inspecting the structural integrity of the slabs that were left after the fire to see if they would support temporary housing for people. And I drove by the miracle house. Every practice that was in that video, they installed, right? that was not a miracle. That happened because of a reason, so.
And on that Palos Verdes fire, all the houses that burned down on the beach, these were beachfront homes. There was a 200-foot fire break called California Highway #1 between any vegetation and those homes. That's 200 feet of nothing but asphalt. But that amber cloud came down that hill. And by the way, if you look at those homes, there were probably, I don't know, 10% of them that survived. They were all built post-90, and that's when the codes were put in LA County.
The last big fire,
LA County Fire Department, the county fire department used to come around to my house every 6 months, encouraging me to upgrade my home, harden my home.
yep. So the fire that's going on right now in the Dalles, the last time it burned this significantly was 2017. At that time, they had spot fires starting over the Columbia River when it was 1.5 miles wide. So if 1.5 miles of water isn't a significant enough fire barrier, we really need to take care of the house in that first 5 feet, so.
Also, I noticed you didn't, and you did a great job with presentation, I sure appreciate it. But, in the, everybody gets the local paper that they get for free, the Northern Light. The, Watkin County put in, they made a no fire, open flame zone. Right, but they also gave suggestions in there. It's a little article, I think, on the 3rd or 4th page of this last week's deal. And it talked about barbecues, all this type of thing, things that ignition sources. You remember, you got a fire triangle. You gotta have oxygen, you gotta have fuel, and you gotta have the ignition source. So, you take any one of those away, you're not gonna have a fire.
Yep, exactly. Break the sides. Going once, going twice. Happy Saturday and thank you again.
Thank you.
Mike Robert, very informative. So I think now we're moving on to the question and answer portion. Do you have another question?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could kind of explain what your committee is doing here in SRA and some of the initiatives that are under the.
Well, it's actually a working group that's been formed, with a combination of committee members. So safety and security, maintenance, environmental committee, ASC, and we're working together collaboratively, both by being educated by people like Robert and Alexis, but also he's referred us to his DNR resources that are at the Department of Forestry, Washington State Department of Forestry. So the 23rd and 24th of this month, we have a forester, Nicole Snortland, who's coming out to meet with SRA officials, working group officials, but also we'll be arranging for her to also meet with the heads of the various neighborhood associations. And what she will do is she'll bring out GIS mapping software so that she can look at, like, St. Andrews Brain 1 and 2 has that big rectangular common area that has like 14 or 15 homes. So she'll look at that area and then map it out and say, here are the trees that should come down. And then here's the mitigation that needs to be done within that 100-foot zone of the home. And help create that plan that you're talking about for the Firewise community, to have a written plan. And if we can't afford, a lot of us can't afford to do all of it at once, because our common areas are so large in our both in our SRA owned common areas, but also in our individual communities. But we can have a plan in terms of what should we do first, what should we do next, and then we can build that into our budgets, our annual SRA budget, and also our neighborhood association budgets, so that by the end of let's say a 2-3 year period, we've pretty much got things under control, and then it's just a matter of maintaining the initial mitigation that we've been doing. So what our working group is trying to do is to leverage the knowledge and the resources of that are all already available to all of us as taxpayers they're free. You know, that's what we're paying taxes for, to get a plan in place for the community that will get us to the point where we're never gonna be 100% bulletproof. But we can do the best that we can do to mitigate our risk. So that's what we're doing. Yes.
Based on everything we hear and the importance thing, getting people involved with things and participating. Do you foresee the board implementing a set of regulations that they enforce? And if so, when?
We'll know more after the forester comes out and does a plan for us. Because they're gonna do a plan for the SRA common areas as well. And that will inform us further. We're still in the learning process through this working group. So that will inform us further as to whether or not we need to have policies enforced, like no more cedar shake roofs being built in the future. If there is a roof that is needing to be replaced, or a new home that's being built, it must be a fire retardant roof, or I think you called it a Class A roof. I don't even know the difference. Yeah, I don't even know the difference between A, B, and C. You know, so like I said, we're still in this learning phase, but it may be that as a result of what we're learning, that the board may have to make some of those decisions. And that would involve, obviously, the ASC to a great extent. Any other questions regarding safety and security or the working group? No? Okay.
Concrete siding.
Oh, yes, that, at the lower portion of your, wall.
All of them, I mean, if you look at the regulation, of course, they have, that lets you put it, but it's kind of like inspection, that's the inspection, you put the James Harvey siding on.
Yeah.
But if they want wood siding, well, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So those will be some of the things that we'll have to review as a community and as a board. So,
Thank you for organizing this.
oh, you're welcome, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for making the trip up to Semiahmoo. We really appreciate it. And as Delia said, we're working hard on educating ourselves, and then being able to have everybody also gain this knowledge and be able to apply it at their homes and neighborhoods. The next portion of the meeting is to take general questions on Semiahmoo Resort Association matters. So what we do is we ask that if anybody has a question, that they come up and give their name and their neighborhood and ask their question. We'll do our best to answer it. If we're not able to answer it here, then we will get back to you later with a response. So, and we're going to do questions in the room first of people who have come to the meeting. Does anybody want to go first? Yes. Hi.
My name is Frank Zagirko. I live in St. Andrews, Green. And along the lines of all the construction that are being replaced.
So we're getting a lot of construction. The vacant lots are being built upon and roofs are being replaced. But what I'm finding is it's actually a party. The workers get out there, they put their boom boxes and they start playing their music, and it's just a vexation to everyone, especially on the golf course. I was wondering what the board does. Do they go and periodically inspect these places?
So we do have regulations that are fairly detailed and specific about construction. They address things like parking, they address things like music and noise. We actually have rules about music and noise that apply to all the neighborhoods, regardless if there's construction going on or not. We rely on neighbors to contact the office and let them know that there's something going on that you would like us to look into, the staff to look into. So if there's music going on or there's something violating the community rules, we ask that you report that to the office. We don't go out and do a regular patrol of new construction or of the neighborhoods to look for infractions, but we're happy to look into any reports that we get.
Brian Powers, I'm in Boundary Bridge, just on the stairs, what's the schedule look like? When they can be done?
I'll have to defer to Aaron, who's done a lot of work on that.
We found on the screen.
I can say at this point, they're moving along nicely. Weather, materials available, stuff like that are a big determining factor on a completion date. If I had to put a guess at this point, I'm gonna guess somewhere in the sometime of August, possibly the end of August. But I'm not gonna hold my contractor to that. He's working pretty hard right now. He's on the most difficult slope and the most steepest slope of the stairs right now. And he still has to rebuild the bottom part of it as well. So we're moving along nicely. He's happy where he's at on the timeline that we've set with them, and hope that we're looking at the end of summer.
Also, is also working on the gravel path that takes you to the stairs, getting that all cleaned up and fresh gravel on and so forth, so that when it's finished from the road all the way down to the beach.
Anybody else? Any other questions in the room? Anybody want to put their hand up?
Tracy Seafold, I live in Night Heron, and I understand, putting the grass low, but the lots that haven't been sold, some of those are quite high.
So this is the same, sort of a similar, theme of people who are not maintaining or following the rules, and there are rules about maintenance of empty lots. You can see them on our website. We, once a year, we do go out and look at the empty lots and do send letters to, homeowners who are not necessarily here. There's people who own empty lots who don't live in Semiahmoo or don't come to visit their lot very regularly. They don't realize perhaps that it's gotten sort of out of sight, out of mind for them. So we do contact those people. It's the same thing. If you see an empty lot that is not following the guidelines that we've set, then please contact the office, and Aaron and his group will follow through. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, Doug, you want to get introduced, name and neighborhood?
Doug Woods, Prestwick Village. I'd just like to thank all of our board members and all of our committee members for the work that they're doing for our community.
Thank you. We're always looking for new volunteers, people who are interested. It's not a big time commitment. It's a good way to get to know some of your neighbors, and we're always very happy to hear from anybody who wants to get involved. Anybody else? Now, we had two questions that came in by email, and I don't have them written down, but one of the questions was from Kurt Hagman. They're both actually from Kurt. One of the questions was about the Carnoustie bioswale. Many years ago, there was the board was looking into repair of that bioswale, and that was done, I think it was in 2023. So I think Kurt's question was whether that had been done or not. And the answer is that yes, that was done in 2023 by the responsible party. So that has been completed a couple of years ago. And then I think he had another question about the marina. His question was why we refer to the marina on our website. the Semiahmoo website, and I think the answer to that is we consider them our neighbors and part of our community. Just like the golf course and just like some of the walking trails and the parks that we have here. So, that's the reason that we include the marina on our website. I think those were the only 2 questions we received by email. So, with that, I would like to thank Pam. Pam has been here helping check everybody in. We want to thank her for volunteering to do that. We'd like to thank our guests, and we'd like to thank everybody who is interested in doing what they can to improve our community and work together to make it a very safe and continue to be a wonderful place to live. With that, I wish everybody a good weekend.